Have you ever felt trapped by your own fears? Like they're these heavy weights holding you down, making you feel small and powerless? If you're nodding your head right now, you're not alone. We all have fears. They're part of being human. But what if I told you that these fears don't have to control you? What if I told you that the very things you're afraid of could become your greatest source of strength? That's what we're here to talk about today, how to transform your fears into power. First, let's get one thing straight. Fear isn't your enemy. It's a natural response to the unknown, to things that might hurt us or push us beyond our comfort zone. But fear doesn't have to be a dead end. It can be a starting point, a doorway to something much bigger if we're willing to walk through it. When you look at fear, what do you see? Most of us see something dark, something that makes us want to turn back, to avoid it at all costs. But what if, instead of running away, we chose to face it? What if we could learn from our fears, use them as a guide to grow and evolve? That's the mindset shift I want to talk about. It's about seeing fear not as something to escape, but as something to embrace and transform. Think about it this way: fear is like a shadow. It follows you around, but it only exists because there's light. That light is your potential, your ability to grow, to learn, and to overcome. The shadow of fear only grows when we turn away from the light, when we let our doubts and insecurities block out what we're truly capable of. But when we face the light, when we move toward our potential, the shadow shrinks. It doesn't disappear completely. It's always there, but it no longer controls us. Let me tell you a story to bring this idea to life. Imagine a young woman named Sarah. Sarah was always afraid of speaking in public. Even the thought of standing in front of a group made her stomach churn and her hands shake. She would do anything to avoid it. In school, she would take lower grades just to avoid presentations. At work, she would let others take credit for her ideas because she couldn't bring herself to speak up in meetings. Her fear was like a wall, keeping her from moving forward. But one day, Sarah reached a breaking point. She realized that her fear of public speaking was holding her back from living the life she wanted. She had big ideas, dreams of leading her own projects, of making a difference in her community. But none of that was possible as long as she was hiding behind her fear. So, she made a decision. She decided to face her fear head-on, to turn her fear into power. The first step was small, but it was a step. She signed up for a public speaking class. It terrified her, but she knew it was the only way to break free. The first class was rough, her voice trembled, and she felt like everyone was judging her. But something happened that night. After the class, she realized that she had survived. The world didn't end. And that realization gave her a tiny spark of courage. That spark grew each time she faced her fear. She kept showing up to class, kept practicing, and little by little, she started to gain confidence. She learned that her fear wasn't something to be ashamed of. It was just a part of her journey, a challenge to overcome. And the more she faced it, the less power it had over her. Sarah's story is just one example, but the truth is, we all have our own version of this story. We all have fears that hold us back. Maybe for you, it's the fear of failure, the fear of being judged, or the fear of not being good enough. Whatever it is, it's real and it's valid, but it doesn't have to define you. Let's dig deeper into how you can start transforming your own fears into power. It all begins with a simple but powerful realization. Your fear is a signal. It's telling you where you need to grow, where you need to focus your energy. When you feel fear, don't see it as a sign that you should stop. See it as a sign that you're on the right path. The path that will lead you to your true potential, To transform your fear, the first thing you need to do is identify it. What exactly are you afraid of? Sometimes we feel fear, but we don't take the time to really understand it. It just sits there in the background, making us uneasy. But when you take a moment to pinpoint your fear, to name it, you start to take control. You start to see it for what it is, a feeling, not a fact. Once you've identified your fear, the next step is to challenge it. Ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? Often, our fears are based on what-ifs and worst-case scenarios that might never happen. When you challenge your fear, you start to see how much of it is based on assumptions, not reality. And that's a powerful realization. Because if your fear is just a story you're telling yourself, you can change the story. But changing the story doesn't happen overnight. It's a process and it requires action. This is where the real transformation happens. You have to take small steps, just like Sarah did. Each step you take, no matter how small, is a victory. Each time you face your fear, you weaken its hold on you. Let's say your fear is the fear of failure. It's a big one for a lot of people. It can keep you from trying new things, from taking risks, from going after your dreams. But what if you started to see failure differently? Instead of seeing it as something to avoid, what if you saw it as a necessary part of the process? What if failure was just feedback, a way to learn and grow? When you start to see failure in this way, it loses its power to scare you. It becomes a tool, something that can actually help you succeed in the long run. This is a huge mindset shift, but it's one that can change your life. Because once you stop fearing failure, you start taking more chances. You start putting yourself out there, trying new things, and that's when real growth happens. The same goes for the fear of being judged. We all worry about what others think of us. But here's the thing, you can't control other people's opinions. What you can control is how much power you give those opinions over your life. When you stop worrying about what others think, you free yourself to be who you really are. You stop living for other people's approval and start living for yourself. And that's where true power comes from. It comes from being authentic, from embracing who you are, flaws and all. It comes from realizing that you don't need to be perfect to be valuable, to make a difference. When you let go of the fear of judgment, you start to live more fully, more boldly. You start to take risks that you wouldn't have taken before, and that's when amazing things can happen. Now, let's talk about the fear of not being good enough. This is a fear that can be crippling, making you feel like you're always falling short, like you'll never measure up. But here's the truth, you are enough, just as you are. Your worth isn't determined by your achievements, by how much you do or don't do. It's inherent. It's something you're born with. When you start to believe this, when you start to see yourself as enough, just as you are, something incredible happens. You stop striving for perfection and start striving for progress. You start to see every step forward, no matter how small, as a victory. And that's where real power comes from knowing that you're enough, that you have what it takes, and that you can keep moving forward no matter what. Transforming your fears into power is a journey. It doesn't happen overnight, and it's not always easy, but it's worth it. Because on the other side of fear is freedom. Freedom to be who you are, to go after your dreams, to live the life you've always wanted. And that freedom is something worth fighting for. So, what's the next step? What can you do today to start transforming your fears into power? It starts with a decision to face your fears, to embrace them, and to use them as fuel for your journey. It starts with small steps, with challenging the stories you've been telling yourself, with taking action even when it's scary. Remember Sarah? She didn't become a confident speaker overnight. It took time, practice, and a lot of courage. But she kept showing up, kept facing her fear, and over time that fear transformed into power. The same can happen for you. Whatever your fear is, you have the power to overcome it. You have the power to take control of your life, to rewrite the script, and to create a new narrative. It won't always be easy, and there will be times when you want to give up. But don't, because every step you take brings you closer to the life you've always dreamed of. And here's the thing, fear doesn't go away completely. It's always there, lurking in the background. But that's okay, because fear isn't a sign that you should stop. It's a sign that you're on the right path, the path to growth, to evolution. It's a sign that you're stepping out of your comfort zone and into your full potential. So, face your fears, embrace them, use them as a guide, as a teacher. And remember, you are stronger than you think. You have the power to transform your fears into power, to turn your doubts into determination, and to create the life you've always dreamed of. In the end, it's not about never feeling fear again. It's about learning to dance with it, to let it push you forward instead of holding you back. It's about using that fear as a stepping stone to greatness. And when you do that, when you turn your fear into power, there's no limit to what you can achieve. So, what are you waiting for? Start today. Take that first step. Face your fear, embrace it, and transform it into the power you need to live your best life. You've got this.